Welcome to a Sunday live Q&A. Simple as that. Hello world. I see people in here. This is just, I didn't really have a solid plan. The only solid plan is I got to take my wife to the airport at 2. It is currently noon. So if I do the full 2 hours, that is the maximum amount of time allocated to this particular live stream. Maybe I'll do one later, but I actually have some more plans later, honestly, to start talking about the new lab. Also, it is a wonderfully beautiful and snowy day here in Michigan. So let me, the video's not still, it's really weird. Maybe there's just too much going on at the Googles. I usually share things because it's easier out of like Google Photo. I have a photo of what the snowy day looks like. There was no snow on the ground and now it's snowing again, but it's going to be like 40 something tomorrow. So yeah, not really a lot of snow going to be sticking. But of course, some of you live in much snowier areas in the far north. So either way, in winter, I do a lot more of these because I don't mind going for a walk, but I don't spend as much time outside. I go, not touch grass, but we'll say touch snow occasionally to get my outdoor exercise. But yeah, I like being indoors, and that's what leads me to finishing so many projects, especially right now. But this is, as I said, Q&A, so feel free to fire off questions that are Homelab and tech related. The things I'm going to start showing, though, is view this over on StreamYard. Let me make sure this is, okay, it's muted. But yeah, I'm finishing off the lab. It's getting close to being done. And I'm super excited about that, like the getting this all finished and set up properly with all the cabling and everything else. That's it's been a lot of work because the way I build my lab is for usefulness and practicality. So having things labeled in a very clear way so I can quickly lab out an idea, answer a question. Matter of fact, I don't know if people realize this, but one of the things I do a lot with my lab is when people even ask me questions and comments on YouTube or in the forums, sometimes they ask a question about something I set up, like, can you do this or can you do that? I frequently just run over to my lab and go, I wonder if I can. I didn't try that. And it makes it kind of fun. So yeah, definitely the 2025 Homelab tour is almost here because there's a lot to talk about for how this is all built, how this is set up, the parts I used. I want to make sure it's thorough. So my goal isn't to showcase the Homelab. My goal is to showcase how you can do this too. This is 100% granted, it does have some costs associated, but some of these things are not expensive. Like even someone might say, oh, I didn't know you could get these short little blue power cords. Yeah, they're $3. They're not expensive. And they make wiring cleanup a lot easier to use some of these short power cords. So I'll be listing out all the tools and parts I used, which cables I use. And these, by the way, these are the cables that I talked about in my cabling video before. And this is the labeling I did. And as soon as Matt, if he's listening, sends over some B-roll of his label maker and my label makers, we have the same brand but different models. I will talk about labeling. So I'm going to do a labeling video, a real short one of how I label things. There's people who agree, there are people who disagree, but I will tell you it's organized, whether you like these labels, because I learned people hate them or love them. But I will still tell you how to do them. And it's the Nimbot labeler. So no deep secrets here. The Nimbot labeler is like $20. It's probably one of the most affordable things in your home lab that will help you keep your sanity and label everything. As of right now, no, we are not doing the podcast. I'm still working on a strategy for that. So once we get the strategy sorted out, I'll be bringing it back. It probably won't be with Jay. I think he's still too busy for it right now. But yes, that is the strategy we got. Just want to thank me and share knowledge. Awesome. Thank you very much. I need your suggestion on Squid proxy and pfSense. My suggestion is to never use Squid proxy and pfSense. It's been deprecated. It's full of security problems that no one's going to fix. I thought it was actually, if you dig into the security problems of Squid, they told the Squid team, a security researcher reached out and told the Squid team, like, hey, look at all these security problems. Squid team goes, yeah, if you want to fix them, it's open source. Feel free to contribute. We don't have time. This is actually the problem with a lot of open source projects. People are like, hey, no one's maintaining this, and maintainers, or it'll complain it's not being fully maintained. And the 1 or 2 people maintaining some popular project going, feel free to send some code commits. We'll look through them. Awesome. I'd love to hear your opinion on utilizing Open vSwitch instead of Linux bridges to leverage your hardware offloading and achieve performance in Proxmox. I don't use Proxmox, so I have no opinion on that. It's built into XCP-ng, and I use it there, so I don't really have any opinions on what's the better way in Proxmox. But if you're using XCP-ng, I believe Open vSwitch is what's running the whole back end of it. Bread ties for cable labels can definitely do that. Yes. One of the things I struggle with building a lab is knowing how to build the infrastructure, but I often struggle to figure out a good workload. So what do you recommend for some practical workloads? There is no such thing as a practical workload. The lab is built basically, in my head at least, and this is all my opinion. So there's not a group of elders that run the Homelab, I guess you could say, that have defined ways to state these things. But I am project driven. So I do things like set up Graylog, and you can see that it's got not a whole lot. There's some CPU usage here, but I'm using Graylog. So I tested it out, and then what I'll do is throw things in Graylog and throw logging at it. Then that's how I will determine that. It's not about trying to simulate something unless you have a prescribed, like people go, this is the database and it gets 10,000 connections. Well, that's a whole different thing, because there are tools to load up and query systems. And so if I have a more prescribed way to do this, like the client says, hey, I need a system that can support 1,000 users on this, and you want to set up software to simulate 1,000 user workload, there are tools for doing that. But most of the time for the lab stuff, it's not is prescriptive. It's not like this is the way you do it. It's more, I set things up and see how they work. After years of queuing various software drivers, how do you organize all this info so that you can easily find it and know what it all is? It's a really good question, and I'll answer it. I use a tool called LogSeek. Let me see if I can pull up something that doesn't have anything in it that's proprietary. Because I do talk about a lot of different things. That I can't necessarily share. All right. If I pull up my LogSeek, which, I don't have an easy way to share this, as swap screens. Anyways, there's a tool called LogSeek, and the concept is knowledge management tools. Notion is a more popular one. So I use LogSeek, which is fully open source and in ways similar to Notion. And it's where I keep all of my code snippets. It's where I keep all of my details of how I set something up, how I configured something, certain commands that I might use rarely, like very rarely. Like I have a couple times, like I've had to solve a problem and I want that knowledge to stay somewhere, but I don't solve this problem often, but it may come up again. So this is where LogSeek comes into play. And I'm planning to do a video on it pretty soon, probably because we're going to be talking about a lot of self-hosted things here in February as a content theme. And that's going to be one of the tools out there, because you do need a place. Now, some people use wikis, they use Bookstack. There's a lot of different ways to do it. There's not one singular solution. And I eventually will probably start. I put a lot of this in my forums, and I've debated, do I also create a blog where I do this? But most of the time I do it in my videos more than anything else. That's one of the reasons I don't maintain a separate blog, and I throw it in my forums. But I've thought about just putting a blog together that embeds my videos, that links to my forums, where more of this can be public. But some of the rare one-off things I do need to do a better job, because I can't do a video every time there's a rare one-off way to solve a problem. But I did think maybe a write-up on that. But maybe I'll just keep landing it in my forums for now, because they are well indexed in Google, and people searching for problems do find it. But back to your solution, what works for you, figure out the right tool. Notion, like I said, is very popular. I prefer LogSeek, LOGSEQ. That's my knowledge management tool of choice. I see people saying they use Obsidian. The one I have is the, hold on, we'll pull it up here for the label maker. I have the old model. So the one I'm using is the Nimbot, the old D11, but there's a new D11. So currently this one's on sale, by the way. This looks like the original one. I've had mine since 2022. Literally 3 years ago, I bought it. I'll throw a link for people wanting this, but it's a great label maker. I can't speak enough good things about like how well it works all these years later. I've printed so many labels with it. I keep it in my backpack because it's light, it's rechargeable. There's no batteries, it's got a little built-in battery, and that battery 3 years later is still working great. I've gone through so many labels on there. It depends. The performance is going to be related to how fast the backplane is for your XCP-ng and Open vSwitch. So how fast the backplane of the board is. I could probably, while we're here, so what system is this on right now? Ryzen 1. So let's clone this. And then we'll take and migrate it to Ryzen 2, and then we'll come back and answer that question. So let's migrate the storage to Ryzen 2. No, I need to migrate the whole VM. I'm so used to using it all with a not shared storage. There, I just have to do a migration. When you're doing a shared storage, it works different. I have a whole video explaining this. That was my mistake for forgetting that. So I'll just hit migrate. But it'll migrate relatively fast between these systems. Anyways, but yeah, how fast you can talk is going to depend on it. Actually, I should leave a couple on the same. I will run some on the same and show you what I can show you what iPerf can do. But it will let you do all the configure, all the switch management on the, it's migrating. I wouldn't even show them what I was migrating. Oops. But I'm migrating one of the VMs to another, but you can use this to define all of it. I've got a whole video on the networking and how the pool networking works inside of here. But yeah, you can build out all your VLANs. I haven't built them out yet. I set this up, but I didn't set any VLANs up. Pretty easy to do. You just choose the interface, build the VLANs out. I've talked about this quite a bit. Where Kubernetes open up job opportunities? Probably. Look at what's in demand. I know the number of people asking for help with Kubernetes is high. The number of Kubernetes engineers is low, but finding high quality Kubernetes engineers is kind of hard. So people don't necessarily want to hire people who just got started, but I will tell you, it goes a long way on your resume to say, hey, I've been doing this for at least some amount of time and I have a good understanding of it. So yeah, it's probably a good for job opportunities. Having speed issues between TrueNAS, ZFS, SR, and XCP when doing package updates and installs works fine when a VDI is local to the host. Where do you start troubleshooting? Almost always, the first thing people do is go in not. It's easier to show. I'm going to log into my TrueNAS and show you exactly what probably is going on. Essentially, what you need to do is make sure, and we go here to data sets, and we'll pull up one of the data sets that I'm sharing with XCP-ng. And we want to, well, you can see it right here. Let me zoom in. Make sure sync is disabled. So if we edit the data set details, go to advanced options, make sure sync is set to disabled. That will make a massive performance difference. I've got an NFS video explaining where the pros and cons are of setting that is. But that will make a massive difference in terms of performance. Like night and day. This is still migrating. Well, that's about done. And that's not migrating. But if we fire up some VMs on here, we have this one fired up. Let me see. So this one, let me figure out the IP address of this. 1631. And if we fire up the Debian lab here, I just finished building these servers. I have no idea how fast they are. What do you think about running TrueNAS on VM versus bare metal? If you like fighting things and troubleshooting problems, run it in a VM. If you like it to work consistently and perform well, run it on bare metal. TrueNAS is always going to be better on bare metal. But if you have use cases of wanting to learn how to do pass-through with virtualization, then do that. If you just like the learning idea of doing it, or you're trying to consolidate things, do that as well. It creates extra challenges. They're not insurmountable, but they certainly are more challenges. So it depends on your goal. Do you want a harder to set up system, a more complex system? Virtualizing TrueNAS is the way. I'll make this a little bigger so people can see it. So let's see. 7.2, 16, I think it was 31. Okay. So we're 10 gigs, 7.8. So about 10 gigs in this through the internal switching. So I believe they're on the same host. This is on Ryzen 1. Where's my Docker? Yep, they're both on Ryzen 1. So the system's able to have these talking together at 8 gigs. It depends on the backplane. Some of them can go faster. Someone told me there's a bug in the Ryzen that limits it more so than in some of the non-Ryzen systems. But is 8 gigs enough? That I've seen people complain about it, but rarely. I mean, do you need more than that? I don't know. That's kind of be a you question. 8 gigs between my virtual machines is enough, but maybe you have something that really needs more speed, and you might need more than that. Now that we got the other one migrated, let's see how fast it is between systems. So this one, we'll start it, but this one's going to be lab on Ryzen 2 server. So let's see how fast it is on Ryzen 2. It might be faster. These are also not, these are Ryzens. They are not your high performance EPYC processors. These are consumer. Actually, let me see what processor they are. These, just so people will know. They are, where's that at? Oh, it's down here. Ryzen 9 5900X. So these are not the server processors. Is there any issue with having one XCP-ng host be thick provision, another being thin provision on the same pool? Not at all. Apps makes no difference. You can move between those storage pools perfectly fine. If a storage pool is thick provision, you can move it to a thin provision anytime. XCP-ng is actually what I've slowly starting to learn, and I'm working on a new comparison video. XCP-ng is way more flexible on that type of thing than other hypervisors. There are lots of ways around it, but I'm learning that there's just trickiness to the way Proxmox handles it versus XCP-ng. They both can do a lot of different things, but there's some nuance there that, you know, I think XCP-ng is just better at, including networking. Yeah, oddly, it's a steady 9.3 gigs per second between the systems here. Well, no, a little bit faster. So 13.2, a little bit. By the way, these are connected at 25 gig. So if we look at the host themselves, they have 25 gig connections. Can you use HA proxy and pfSense to load balance DNS servers? I think you'd have to I mean, usually, I don't think you usually use HA proxy for load balancing DNS servers, because DNS servers can, you know, do round robin requests. And if you're doing UDP, I don't think you can do UDP inside of HA proxy for that. Maybe I'm wrong. I've certainly never used it for that. In a business setting, I have a receptionist. How do I use UniFi Talk text messaging? Currently, we have Ring Central. They only have desktop app, and they use SMS. How do you do that with UniFi? I have no idea. I have never used UniFi Talk. Have you tried the new QCOW2 format on XCP-ng? I believe it's in alpha right now, so the answer is no, not at this time. Will I try it? Yeah, probably pretty soon. They have a whole new storage driver system that they're working on. I will probably have a extra system in my lab that I just use for trying that. That I usually keep 2 stable systems so I can fail over between them if I need to. No, it's not high availability with 2 servers. It's just 2 servers. Nothing I run in my lab needs high availability, but I have my stable lab where I don't want any problems because I'm running other software. And then I have my other systems that I reload to do everything else. Also, this is an idea of what my lab looks like. I threw the lights on there because they look cool, but it's getting there. It's slowly getting where I want it to be. This is what it looks like with less fancy lights. Kind of boring. It looks way cooler when you take it in a picture like that. But I moved all my, this is all the switching that kind of goes to my house. I moved that out of the cages. There's just not enough room to put a rack on the wall and fit all of it. So I moved that to the side. This is also something, I know a lot of people hate these. They're like the side mount rack posts, but they work so well. You know, it's a regular rack. I just bolted it to the side of the wall. It's just like it's not really a rack. It's just like an open frame that can use rack nuts. Or I'm using rack studs because I like them, but it's just a simple way to do it. I moved my I didn't want my Home Assistant to be inside essentially what is a bunch of metal that would cause problems. So I put Home Assistant outside of it. That's what the little orange boxes on top is. That's my Home Assistant sitting right here. And it's powered over PoE. So that's this one cable that just goes under, goes to a little PoE to 5-volt box and does its thing. Yeah, once I do the tour, a lot of stuff I do is just really purposed to be as practical as possible. You know, even the like the way I do all the labeling here, you know, it's just to be super practical. So this absolutely corresponds to these. So you have, you know, 1 through 8 here. Then we zoom back out, we go back over to this, and you got the same thing, 1 through 8. So there's 8 you can see in my hand, 7, 6. And I just make the labels extra clear. That's so I can read them even without my glasses on. So I can always see 7 and the word 7, 6 and the word 6, etc. Plus, I didn't want the labels to be just one number on there. And that's how it looks from the back. It's pretty clean. Oh, man. If you're wondering, I was grilling steak yesterday. This is what it looks like before I put it in. So this is the top-down view of the wiring. Well, I changed it up a little bit. That's pork loin for anyone wondering what that picture is. You're like, Tom, that looks kind of gross. Well, it depends if you like pork loin or not. Huh. That's weird that doesn't want to process that video. Strange. I use one of those frames as my server rack for cost reasons. It was tricky to get the spacing right, though. Yeah, it's really convenient, though. I really like those. I got to find a link to it. I bought it off Amazon. It's cheap. So I'll find the links if people are looking for those. We've used them at clients for the same exact reason, where there was just nowhere to put some of this stuff. There wasn't enough room to put a box and have it swing out. So it's just easier to put it, you know, it's one switch for a client. I don't want it just setting somewhere. I wall mounted the switch and done. Patch panel switch. It's especially with so many of these newer businesses. And I say newer because this is something that you see more with newer companies. They don't have any on-prem equipment and they probably won't. There's these small losses and there's like 8 people there. why would they put a server in? They just put it all in the cloud, especially because they don't always have all 8 of those people even at the office. So those really basic setups are really nice for that. All my hosts in XP are 8.1. Update to master 8.3 first. Can you change a host to thin provision during this update? No, once you've built the storage with thin or thick, it stays that way until you rebuild the storage. It's also the difference between EXT and LVM storage. Absolutely, you could go from the command line to change it. There is no UI option to change it. So yes, but updating the master first is a must. You have to update your master and then update all the subsequent ones. If I'm not mistaken, 8.21 has no problem talking to an 8.3 master, I'm pretty sure. So it's not like you lose access to the pool until the update's complete. You can update them incrementally, and it should work fine. But once you have, I do know this to be true, once you have a newer version as master, the older ones can no longer be master. So you do have that limitation until they're all at the same version. Thanks for the networking lab video. Yes, my home assistant does run on a Raspberry Pi 4. How to properly handle backups and disaster recovery. What's your strategy? I'm afraid of losing data and access to stuff I need daily, like Home Assistant and TrueNAS. Happy Sunday. There's a few strategies I have. One of them I'm going to probably talk. I've talked about these things individually, but I could talk more about how I'm using them. And SyncThing is the first piece of my backup strategy. And this is where people go, but Tom, SyncThing syncs files. It's not backing them up. Correct. But if we go back over and log into my TrueNAS, and I have several of these, TrueNASs, some of them being off-site, and we see that I have SyncThing running on these TrueNASs. So here's SyncThing running on the TrueNAS, and when it runs on this TrueNAS, there are a series of snapshots. So if we look at the data set and we look at the SyncThing data, you'll see there's a here we go. There's all these snapshots running. So I have snapshots, and in SyncThing itself, you can tell it to keep versions. So I'm double versioning everything, which has a storage cost, but that's a big piece of my backup strategy is that. The next piece is I'm using, because I'm running Linux, I use Deja Dupe. Deja Dupe works great. It's just Linux. It's just backup in Ubuntu. It's like the built-in utility. Same with Pop! OS where I actually use it. That creates entire snapshots and versions of that, and that all gets stored in my TrueNAS, and then my TrueNAS syncs to an offsite TrueNAS. That's the part that there's going to be a divide on, because how do you back it up? If you don't have the ability to have an offsite TrueNAS, I understand. Not everybody will. That's where you can look at like Backblaze. You could look at Storage. I'm going to call it Storage. I think they said that's fine to call it that. I've been talking to them, but Storage works fine as well. It's only minimally slightly cheaper than slightly cheaper than Backblaze, but it works. It's not the fastest, but it's effective, and it's one of those things like better to have it than not have it. So if you have a lot of data backup, having it stored offsite in something like Storage is more reasonable than the thought of losing all your data. I dislike paying cloud providers, but someone's got to pay the bill. I mean, there's a cost to me keeping it offsite. There's electricity bills. I just happen to have buildings that are outside of my studio where I can back them up. But that's kind of a strategy. And then really important is I don't just back up my data. I have an entire folder called configuration backups. So I have a config backup file for each one of my things that I back up, all my pfSenses that I back up, all the configurations for the TrueNAS itself that are backed up. Each one of those things goes in its own organized by name. So it's kind of hierarchical, where there's a folder called TrueNAS. Under that folder is each name of each TrueNAS. In each folder is the backup file that I pull anytime I make changes. I don't have a super clear coloring system for it. I mostly just chose like orange for the camera systems, but the other ones are kind of mixed. I don't have a solid. I'm using blue for representing lab and black for things that aren't lab, but it's not real solid. It's more solid at clients when we do it than it is in my lab. My lab changes too much and has I have more than a rainbow of VLANs, which is and plugs. So it's hard to have one color. Love your content. Thank you for all the information you share with us about XCP-ng, ZFS, and TrueNAS. Awesome. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Been pretty happy with FreeBSD and ZFS and GLs. Awesome. For our enterprise customers, no UI. I feel old. Unfortunately, I wouldn't do a video about it because it sucks, but I feel like ZFS, well, not ZFS, but FreeBSD is just fading away. It's going to become more niche. So it's not something I feel comfortable moving our production clients. So I know BSD is awesome. I just feel like it's contracting as a option, not expanding, and finding people to expand on it's hard. When do you plan on releasing UniFi zone-based VLAN firewall setup? Very excited to see that. Maybe in the next probably 2 weeks, I think. Will NVMe OF? I don't know how people say it. I read it. I know what it is, but I'm just saying I read it, and I don't know how people actually say it. Is it NVMe OF? Anyways, replace iSCSI. Oh yeah. Eventually, all this stuff gets replaced, but legacy has a long tail. And by the way, I pointed this out in my DAC video that the 25 gig has been around for 10 years, and 10 gig has been around for just about 20 as it got released in 2006. There's a diminishing return on some of these higher speeds. Now, there's a need for it at the hyperscaler data center level. At some point at the Homelab level, it's diminishing returns. You have so many other bottlenecks that are expensive to overcome. And if you're just trying to do it to see how fast the connection can go, it becomes kind of like, how much do you want to spend to see how fast the connection can go? Or do you actually have real use case for moving that data? Even some of our bigger clients, we just upgraded one of them because we're replacing network. We put in all 100 gig links between each one of the areas, but they have nothing. They just don't have the budget. And this is a big company. It's not, well, I should say they are not allocating the budget. The CEO of the company makes enough that they could certainly solve this problem, but they have chosen not to. But they aren't upgrading the servers to actually be able to serve up the full 100 gig pipe between them. But on the other side, that would be an expensive venture because they have 4 petabytes of storage. Could they make it fast enough to saturate 100? Well, like I said, the CEO and the executive management team, if they were willing to take a pay cut, we could solve that problem for them. But I don't think that's happening anytime soon. So will it ever replace it? Eventually. When? Depends on demand and need. Hi, greetings from Poland. Awesome. Question is it possible to connect volume from TrueNAS over iSCSI and simultaneously share the contents of volume over SMB? No. iSCSI is a block level. So you're taking and bringing the blocks. So whatever you're attaching iSCSI to can do the formatting. SMB wouldn't be able to understand that because SMB is file system, not block. There's blocks underneath the file system, and that's being handled by ZFS. So the answer to that is no. Is it possible to write synchronous to 2 pools in real time for replication without clustered file system if you lose data? I mean, I assume, let's say you're talking ZFS pools, and not really. It's not designed for that. That's not how ZFS was designed to work. So not really. I'm sure there's hacky ways to do it. ZFS does not itself have a methodology to do it. Matter of fact, ZFS itself, besides synchronizing things with Gluster, which is now defunct, there's not anything built into ZFS to say, make these 2 pools a mirror of each other in real time. There are tools that can sit on top that are able to do that, like Gluster. But honestly, when you start looking at file systems, and I don't even call it file systems, storage management solution to be more accurate, like Ceph, they have that engineered into them. So Ceph becomes a better solution for that. There are ways to do it because you can do, what's that other tool called? It's actually the one XCP-ng uses. There are other tooling. There's some other tooling out there to do it, but it's it's not something like natively built in, I should say. How to allow traffic between two LANs on pfSense with same IP address? No, not if they have the same IP. Routing requires, in order to understand how a subnet works, it doesn't touch the gateway until you go outside of that. So if you have two subnets with the same range, they don't know what's in what's other subnet. Oh, what's the alternative to Backblaze? Store, yeah. I just did a video on that as well. So let me just, I'll throw a link to it for anyone that hasn't seen it, because it's natively built in. They call it, let me share it out. So let's do it. I'll link in here for anyone who hasn't seen the video. There you go. Watch your video about ZFS as a file system in XCP-ng. Wondering if it's possible to install XCP-ng OS directly on the ZFS. With enough engineering, anything is possible. But no, currently it does. That's not supported. It's open source, so could you re-engineer it? So I don't want to say no. I would say I don't know how to do it. I would say it's a complicated task that could be done. It is not natively supported. Oh, so many Homelab people argue about drag racing. That's their favorite debate. Let's drag race. What do you mean, let's drag race? Like, the only thing they worry about is speed between iPerf. Like, oh, no, you have to go 100 gig. I wouldn't wire my network for anything. What? You just want to burn money? And these people talk about this stuff, and I'm like, it's impractical. There are bandwidth limitations of all the other equipment you have. Spend less money, unless you just have unlimited funds. For those of you that have unlimited funds, please share some of your wealth and spread it around and do that. But for those of us that don't have unlimited budgets for things, and I tend to really sympathize with those people. I have probably a bigger budget than average because of the work I do and the businesses I own. But I try to bring things because I don't like to say, look, this is an expensive, easy way to solve it. Like, no, let's talk about what is the most practical way, what makes sense, and what is accessible for all of you to learn. That matters more to me. Any recommendation of Keystone couplers? I don't know if I found bad ones. I don't even know which ones I bought. I don't think I spent a lot of attention to this. I have them listed in my previous lab build videos. You can find them. I use a tool called kit.co. But I'll throw a link to them. What are the ones I had? These ones. So I'll drop a link to these. These are among the ones I use. But if you look in the links to my videos, it's kit.co/lawrencesystems. There's like build out kits I have, and we've been updating all the kits. So if you follow, and I'm dropping another link here, kit.co/lawrencesystems. Yeah, Proxmox Data Center Manager is cool. They're catching up with the features in XCP-ng. Awesome. That's how I feel about it. Like, I think it's great that Proxmox is, offering things that we're used to in XCP-ng. That was a complaint I had before about Proxmox's no central way to manage all the servers versus XCP-ng. That is what it's meant to do, is manage multiple distributed pools. You can do this if you attach iSCSI to Windows Server, and then you can share a folder from Windows on the iSCSI volume. Yes, that works. DRDB, yes, DRDB. Linbit is the one I'm looking for. It's on the tip of my tongue. But for those interested, Linbit is an option for doing that. It's my best part. I only know half the answers. My audience is good at kind of filling in the gaps here. I bought a UCG Max to manage my XG24 and act as a NVR for G4 Pro. I want to leverage pfSense box to perform all the routing, issue DHCP for the entire network to use 10 gigs network. I mean, you can. It's a more complicated setup. There's a way I've talked about using, if you type in like pfSense and UniFi, I've got videos on showing ways it can be done. My lab happens to have a mix of pfSense and UniFi because I'm testing both of them. Yeah, 2.5 gig is probably enough for most people. But I mean, 10 gig is nicer for moving. If you're moving virtual machines, 10 gig is nicer. I'm not going to lie, but it's hard to even fully saturate a 10 gig system. I've also, I just migrated servers, but I'm going to kind of follow up on this. Where did that picture go? For the last few months, I ran everything on this, and this was at 1 gig. Then I swapped it when I got the 2.5 gig, because each of these has 2.5 gig. I ran XCP-ng for months with this and ran all my workloads that I needed, including Graylog. Graylog worked fine at 2.5 gig for what I was doing. This is a low cost, low power. I say low cost, that's fuzzy. Low cost is subjective because that is a B-Link, and it does have, I think it's like a $600 or $700 box. So yeah, there's some costs associated with it because it's new, but it only used a few watts and was more than at 2.5 gig. It was plenty. Oh, I 100% believe you right here, man. Modern mini PCs have made powerful Homelab accessible and somewhat affordable and low wattage and low noise. These are just a easier by every measure to get started with and not have a bunch of noise. And for some people, they may not have a separate room or a basement or some area that they can put all these. And the power draw for them sometimes is prohibitive as well. Have you tried Cobtel? Cobtel cable? Never heard of them. Cobtel cable management tray. Oh, these. I've seen these before. I've mostly seen these right here. I don't like those. I am going to do this is kind of neat though. But how much is that? I guess, do they sell Cobtel on Amazon? Oddly, they sell them on Alibaba. Now I'm curious. They don't show up on Amazon, so I guess they don't sell them there. So they sell them on Alibaba, or they sell them here? Where do you buy them? How much do they cost? Because honestly, I mean, these look nice. But where does one buy these things besides Alibaba? Huh. One of the things I'm doing, and let me pull up the photo I had. I use the well, there we go. I'm using these as a cable loom. So these are just your standard patch panels. And I just use them to loom cables through because it looks nicer and it keeps them from just flopping around everywhere. And this is super cheap. These are not expensive to buy. They're just keystones without the keystone in them. And then some of them have keystones in them. So these fit through. These even fit, if you look, even DAC cables go through here. So I've always used these to kind of loom cables through. I also think it's funny that this is labeled Cat 6. Like, it takes keystones. The Cat 5 keystone fits in here too, by the way. So it's just a keystone adapter. Any experience with Nutanix? I work in backup software for a major vendor in that space. I'm trying to learn a major hypervisor for my job. Nutanix is the next one up for me. I've never used it. It seems to be somewhat popular. I don't know what their market looks like in terms of like how much penetration they have into the market. My review from my friend at Two Guys Tech, he did a nice review of Nutanix. It's expensive. It's proprietary. I one of the problems I have with any of these companies is I think about the fundamental of the company. They're closed source. They were for sale. They were trying. If you start Googling Nutanix, you'll find out the company was trying to get bought by someone like probably Broadcom. And the only they've been losing money for years. They've only started making money now because of VMware. But the fact that they're publicly traded and trying to get bought, I feel like you're just going down the path of a company that will potentially do another rug pull. Like, use Nutanix. It's awesome. It's cheaper than VMware. Private equity firm goes, hey, look, they have enough market. How don't we buy them and squeeze everybody like Broadcom did? Yeah. What is the best VPS service for reverse proxy? I don't know who's the best. I've never spent time comparing all the VPS services. You've acquired 2 UCS T240 M3 servers for TrueNAS, but the RAID card won't do JBOD. You seem to run into a lot of headaches when you have a RAID card that won't do JBOD. TrueNAS may have problems with it. I've seen a lot of that breakage. Ceph over 2.5 and 5 gig. Oh, Ceph will work over 1 gig. It's not going to perform, but it'll work. So performance versus working is the question. Working is easy. You can do low bandwidth situations, but if you want it to be performant, I mean, how patient are you? I run some stuff on some really low powered servers, which I'm happy with because it doesn't require much. My RSS feeds that pull in from Fresh RSS does not run on a fast processor at all, but it also doesn't matter. It doesn't need to. Yeah, these new minis are really efficient. Yep, and the mini forums MSO1. I think that one is really been popular because of the 10 gig. So let me pull it up. Yeah, this one here, I think, is what people are talking about. I'm hoping they, come up with some more AMD models, but where's the specs on this? I think this is the one. I hate when companies do that. Just give me the specs. Make this easy. Give me nerd details. Here we go. There's the nerd details at the bottom. Like, why? Who needs flashy graphics? We just want the nerd details. 10 gig. There we go. That's what we're looking for here. And what is all this? This is annoying. Whoever did this site, you're fired if I were to see. Like, this is terrible. I had to close like 3 things to see stuff. MSA2 is going to be hype, but the MSO1 is probably still the best for Homelab equipment sort of server. Yeah. The way Proxmox is built, VMSF is effectively hyperconverged infrastructure solution. How do you deal with XCP-ng by running TrueNAS VMs replication? Oh no, you can do hyperconverged with XCP-ng as well. That is hyperconverged options are supported with XCP-ng. Curious my thoughts on TR. I've never used it. It looks novel. So no thoughts on it. Never used it. I guess it's some e-ink thing. I don't know. No opinion on it. Uh, 2x25 NIC bridge to the main network, 10 gig pfSense, doable in modern hardware. It depends. The problem is with pfSense that you run into, it's single stream limitation versus multi-stream limitation. Single stream, probably not. Multi-stream, yes, it's achievable to get the higher speeds. Why do you use XCP-ng, not Proxmox? Yes, for the reasons. Yes, I've got a whole business video on it, and I call it a business video because there's mostly business reasons, but it's scalability. Scalability is where you really get easier appliance like true hypervisor scalability with XCP-ng that is not achieved the same way. And I've had more, now granted, there's a bias here. Most of the time when people contact me about Proxmox, it's just broken in a way that they can't figure out how it's broken. And they don't seem to have good luck with support, so they reach out to us for it. I don't know always what led to people's scenarios with it, but it seems that it's harder to break XCP-ng in the ways you break Proxmox. Also Proxmox, because they're receiving Debian updates, and granted, this can be solved with better updates by paying for the license, and you get their more, I guess, stable update repository of Proxmox. But I've had people break the networking in it more than anything else. What is your cluster storage of choice XCP? Does it have Ceph integration out of the box? You can load Ceph onto it. Yum install the Ceph RDB stuff. So it's not, they don't have any UI for managing Ceph, but you can connect it to Ceph. How are the QNAP switches? You know, I've not looked at the QNAP switches. QNAP reached out to me, but then realized I've done videos talking about just how bad their security is. I don't know if their switch security is any better than their QNAP storage boxes, but their storage boxes are bad for security. Let's see. Looking at TrueNAS apps for your main power for power settings, better C states. No need for HBA. Can lower C states. Yeah. Would you ever replace working hardly solely due to better power efficiency in newer hardware? I'm using power hungry stuff for simple tasks, but buying new server seems wasteful. I mean, it's just kind of a calculation. How much does that power usage cost you? What's the cost of replacing it? If it's, let's say, $1,000 to replace it over the next 5 years, like, would you have saved $1,000 in electricity? I don't know, because that's kind of a you question. How much does your electricity cost? Some areas, and it varies even here in the United States, but I know in Europe, the calculation changes a lot. There's some areas in Europe, as I've been told, I'm no expert on this, I'm just listening to the audience, that power costs substantially more. And if power is very expensive in the area you're in, yeah, that calculation says these servers that work are definitely not ideal. Also, you can recoup some of the costs if you know someone else who wants to buy the servers. Comes back to, are there people in the area that would like to buy them? Yes, Brett, choose XCP-ng every time. Is it possible to use Kali Linux instead of pfSense? Well, Kali Linux is a distribution with lots of tools for hacking. pfSense is a firewall. So they're not a comparison. They're both like software, and that's where the similar, they both are software. I wouldn't put them on the same level as comparison. Now, can you turn a Linux system into a router? Sure, you can, if you know how. Any input on metadata VDEVs on SATA SSDs, 10 gig HomeNAS user, worthwhile or not worth? So do you have millions and millions of files? Do you have time? Does it take you a lot of time? Like, I talked to someone who had 34 million files. Metadata VDEVs made a lot of sense for them. Wendell has a video about metadata VDEVs because he had something like 1 million tiny little files. Made complete sense. For me, I don't use them. I don't have my files is even my archive going back to 2017 for YouTube. I could do a file count sometime, but like sometimes I use the find command to find names of files, like B-roll files I have. Even that takes like, I don't know, 10 seconds, 15 seconds on my system when I'm digging through stuff. But metadata VDEV would probably speed that up a little bit. but I'm saying maybe takes 10 seconds. I'm not doing the query often enough that it matters. So the question comes down to, do you have a workload that would be enhanced by it? If you have people doing like the company that's doing the 34 million files was interesting. They just have a massive data store, and there's tons of small little graphics files they have because it serves up their all very organized but massive amount of files that are organized for like a printing and graphics company. Tons of little tiny graphics. So they definitely benefit from metadata like that. But for most part, most people don't need it. And if you have a bunch of large files, it becomes even less relevant. My only issue with XCP-ng is the screen resolution is grayed out on VMs. Have not been able to figure that out. It's very annoying. Watch my video on that. I show you how to solve that. I mean, if you search for it, you land in my forums. It's explained in my forums as well. I believe it's titled... It's probably covered in my guest utilities one for Windows. I have a guest utilities, but I'll drop you the forum post, save you from watching a video. But I will throw this link in here, follow this link, and it explains how to set that up. There's a setting you have to get to that's in the BIOS. Not the BIOS of XCP-ng, the BIOS of the virtual machine. I think there's documentation on it now, but follow my link in the forums and you can find the answer. I'm migrating Plex media from an R720 with SAS drives to a Supermicro NAS via SMB, and it's capping at 50. Is Samba slow or is something wrong? You have to look at the CPU load. If the CPU is pinned and it's Samba pinning it, then it's probably CPU bound. There are some limitations by how fast it can move. There may be something else causing it. Maybe the speed of the drives. I'm not sure which is the issue. A lot of people don't realize that, especially we ran into this with my friend's system and some of the Dell backplane stuff. There's some limitations on the Dell backplane we found for where our bottlenecks were. I have a coworker who's using Linux VPS with BGP routing to export ports from his home network to duck CGNet. Yeah, that can be done. I don't know that you need BGP for it. You just need to, and I talked about this in one of my other videos, like getting around CGNet. You can use WireGuard for that as well. Definitely software RAID is what you're looking for here in 2025. Wendell did a good video breaking down why software RAID is dead. And there are some maybe very limited circumstances where hardware RAID may outperform it. And there's still times out of simplicity that we'll still use a hardware RAID controller in like a Dell server because it's convenient. So it depends on more the scenario than anything else. Like, how are you going to set this thing up? That's where that question comes in. Like, are you building a bunch of drives, or you want to buy a Dell with a hardware RAID controller? I mean, there's nothing wrong with the Dell hardware RAID controller. I've used it. It seems to work fine. I haven't really run into any problems. It's pretty proven, so to speak. Have you used Spice protocol? It can be used for VDI. It's like VNC, but lower in the stack as its pipeline virtualization system. I think Spice is what they're using inside of Proxmox. So if we go back over to my virtualization system here, the reason that I just never think about that, these are all Linux servers. I don't ever need to be in the console, so I don't care. I only went out of convenience, so I don't have. I almost always SSH in. The reason I didn't is only to make it easier to display on a live stream. So Spice might make this look nicer because I think this is like VNC. on the back end, but I'm using SSH all the time, so it doesn't really matter. And I might do some videos because I know a lot of people looking for something open source business wise. Use a tool called Screen Connect, but I want to do a video on Rust Desk. So for those of you looking for a remote desktop application, I would use that. I never care much about looking at it through the hypervisor. Never tested any of the Intel Arc stuff yet, so I don't know much about that. So Unraid transfers are SMB limited CPU. SMB, if you're using Unraid, depending on how Unraid's configured, a lot of the Unraid is bound to the speed of one hard drive. Unraid does not perform like TrueNAS. That's one of the things I've learned is Unraid's fun for the Homelab project, and the reason it never grows up to be a business use case, the way Unraid does drives is not very performant. It's performant enough for people running Plex. So as a use case, it works well. As I need to move things at much higher speeds. Well, now that's where it's, you never need to move terabytes. Well, you might need to, but you never are streaming terabytes of data that need higher speed. You can run tons of 4K streams on a slower connection. But when you're going, hey, I have 9 terabytes of data, I want to move from here to there, then you go, oh, now I see the bottleneck. So the bottleneck doesn't show up in everyday use for Unraid. The bottleneck definitely shows up with how Unraid handles like large scale transfers. NFS and FTP are extremely different solutions. I don't think anyone should be really using FTP anymore. That's pretty deprecated now. It still might work, but I wouldn't. I would definitely use, especially for speed. NFS is going to be way faster than FTP. Rsync is definitely the better way to do this. Well, Rsync is something that can be used over a share or natively. So you can actually use, when you're setting it up, you can tell Rsync to work as a module, and then Rsync can handle talking, having two servers talk to each other. And it's relatively fast. Rsync's great. I've used it quite a bit. I like Rsync. It does take a while to index all the files and figure out the differentials between the source and destination, but it's great. But you can also use Rsync from the command line in Linux and use it over an existing share. You can say, take the files from here and put them over here on this share. So you can use it that way as well. But at some point, this is one of the problems you're very likely to run into, is that it depends a lot on the speed of your system. So back to your earlier question, I don't know how fast with your setup Unraid is set up. So Unraid has its own performance issues when it comes to how it handles drives. So if it's never, a lot of Unraid setups are never faster than a single drive. So you may be maxing out as fast as that one drive can send data, and that's it. How about that Rsync CVE? Oh yeah. So the dumb part about that CVE to me, in my head, is just the fact that so many people had this publicly exposed. Why are people still publicly exposing things? Because Rsync itself, I never thought of something. I know people do argue with me about this, but I've been years and years of having my tinfoil hat on too tight, where I just didn't expose services. And people are like, why do you put everything behind a VPN, Tom? You're just overcomplicating things. And it's funny going back and, I've been a big advocate of locking things down in a VPN forever. And it's funny now because people are like, yeah, that's good design. I'm like, it's always been good design. I know it added overhead. I know it added complexity, but I just it might, if you roll back to when Tom started going to hacking conferences, it was started with the 2600 groups that I was part of all the way back in the 90s, and then to hacking conferences in the early 2000s. And I was like, oh man, everything should be locked down. And I've always kept that same mantra. And for anyone that didn't notice, the other camera's not on, so I can't switch to it. I mean, I have tons. I still collect all the 2600 books and things like that. I'm still a long time, advocate of hacking stuff and security, and that's what got me down this path. But yeah, so the Rsync CVE, absolutely concerning. More concerning is how many publicly exposed systems there are. Yeah, VPN tunnel for the win. Absolutely. Yeah, Cloudflare, always got mixed feelings on. It's definitely a good service. My challenge is I just don't like being locked to a company. I don't know, that always bothers me. But granted, if you don't have another solution, and they are offering it for free, so not bad. But yeah, it really kind of says, I love you, Cloudflare, and we are now in a relationship together. Now, whether or not Cloudflare loves you back, I don't know. They may love you now, but will they love you later? You don't know. So be prepared if you decide to use Cloudflare for the day that they do not love you, and they decide to either A, charge an exuberant amount of money, or B, just not do it anymore. Cloudflare does not, that I know of, really. It's kind of a loss leader, as they refer to it in business. It's a way to get you using some of their services. And it works until it doesn't, because they decide that's not the strategy that works for them. Same thing goes for Gmail. I mean, granted, Google makes a lot of money off Gmail, and Gmail is the most popular, absolutely the most popular email service out there. But it's free until it's not. And I know Google does have some upsell options to make it not free, but it is one of those things to consider. Like, people who are going, but I've had this Gmail just forever. And what if Google decided, how we make money? We charge everybody $50 a year for their Gmail address. That's the new cost. Because if you have millions, or how many users of Gmail there are, whatever that exorbitant number is, some bean counter will go, this is how we make more money next year. We start charging for Gmail. You still collect them, even though Eric was a douchebag at a ham convention once. Well, and here's the other problem. Tailscale is the same problem. They currently seem to be a benevolent company doing a cool thing. Everyone is until they're not. So you're just trading one proprietary service for another. And I know that is a high on your horse way to be. I will totally take that. Tom, you're just saying that you're being high on your horse on this because you have access to lots of servers. Yes, but I'm not saying not to use it. I'm just trying to raise awareness of what your risk is for using any particular proprietary service. Always have a backup. It's backup. It's also it's situational awareness is probably the best thing I want people to be cognizant of. Like, you should have situational awareness of what you're doing, and it's fine. It doesn't mean it's bad or wrong. It's just like, we refer to this in business, your shared responsibility matrix. Shared responsibility matrix means me choosing services or software to put with you. So companies hire us, we choose the software. There's a shared responsibility matrix. Like, I may recommend some company, because we use a bunch of, we use ConnectWise, we use Zoros. There's all these different companies that we use Bitwarden, and we're not going to self-host every Bitwarden instance for every client. It's impractical. So on your shared responsibility matrix, we set up the software, we manage it, Bitwarden's hosting the servers, and we're going to call on the client's behalf, but we have to understand the risk of using Bitwarden if Bitwarden changes. And anything happens. Or Microsoft. As much as I really don't like Microsoft, we sell a lot of Microsoft because that is what integrates with most of the line of business applications for my clients. So just situational awareness. I'm using XCP-ng and XOA to back up my VMs. Awesome. Is there a way to improve the backup speed? You need to back up additional local hard drives, transfers under 40. You might be CPU bound, and that is a possibility. The backups use a lot of resources of the CPU. They use a lot of resources of the XOA VM. So the XOA VM needs to have a fast enough connection to do this. One of the ways, especially because you're bringing it in and pushing it out the same network interface, you can put multiple network interfaces and you can build a storage network. So it comes in on one network and goes out on another network, and that can increase the performance of it. Tailscale does not have a backend you can host yourself. There is a third-party utility called Headscale that will allow you to host your Tailscale instances, but Tailscale does not offer a third-party hosting. NetBird does offer third-party hosting. NetBird lets you host the controller and the individual pieces as well. Yeah, Headscale exists. I believe it's being actively maintained. I haven't looked at it in a while. I did a video on Headscale a while ago. I like the idea of replacing Gmail with TomMail. As soon as I invent TomMail. What DNS do you use for your forums? Linode. I think Linode handles all my DNS for my forums. Let me verify that. Let me spell my name right. Yes, Linode handles my DNS. By the way, if you want to look that up, just use the dig command, dig lawrencesystems.com space NS, and it'll tell you the name servers that are used. I seen it in the news. I have no opinion on it. Yeah, Proton offers services as well. I've not used them. I just know they offer them. I know people have used it. Your video on OpenVPN for privacy VPN has changed my life. Awesome. My wife thinks seeding ISOs keep Big Brother filtering content. Yes. Headscale's maintainer is employed by Headscale. Is Headscale a business? So they have sponsors. Cool. Been a while since I looked, so good to see that they're offering sponsors. Maintained by Christopher Dolby and Juan Font. Nice. So yeah, this pack, it's got more advanced. So pretty cool. Shout out to them. Sponsorship's not a bad way to go. What do you offer a client that needs VDI? I believe we are selling some of the VDI solution right now through the Azure Remote Desktop. I think we have a couple clients using that. Currently, I'm looking for single-socketed EPIC motherboards that can support 16 DIMM. Any tips? Nope. I don't keep up enough with hardware to tell you any recommendations on that. I've never used Notepad++, so I don't know what the Linux equivalent would be. I'm old school and use Vim probably more than I should or other people would want to. I don't know. I just do a lot of things in Vim. I've never used I haven't used Windows in 16 years, like as my daily driver. I interact with Windows, but I interact with Windows less and less all the time. Should basement hosted server stacks have conduit for routing? I did not run conduit for myself. I think conduit's nice. Do you need it? I don't know. How overkill do you want? One of my friends says, because he does things over the top all the time, overkill's the only kill. He has a budget for that, so, or patience for it. Pick one. How do you block VPN connections originating in LAN? These connections are using port 443, so I can't really stop them. Exactly what you just said. There's not any easy way. There's, for any filtering system, and there's a lot of them out there, there's people getting around it. Until you get all the way down to running an agent on the endpoint, that's the only way you're really going to stop things. I ever have a follow-up on the U7 Pro Max, kind of left in a dark any issue. Greetings, big fan from the Netherlands. I don't know what to say about that with the U7 Pro Max. Not really. I see people talking about it. I have one. I think it's it's not burning me. It's definitely hot, but it hasn't died. So I don't know how to, I don't know much about it. It does seem to run hot. I don't know exactly how hot, but it does seem to be a relatively hot thing. I haven't had any problems with it. I leave it plugged in, which is just to use it. But yeah, I don't really have another opinion because it's they've had a couple models in the past. We have one of them, like the original, the Gen 1 PoE 16 port switch. That thing's hot. It's been running in a closet for one of our clients. I can't believe it's been running for 6 years and it's still hot. It still feels like this thing should die, but 6 years later, it's not dead. So I agree with you. It's hot. I don't know if it's a problem. I have 10 terabyte drive as a backup volume called backup on scale. I'd like a second backup in a different geographic area. How do I add another 10 terabyte drive to my original scale and sync backup, then move? You can, I mean, ZFS replication would be the easy. ZFS replication would probably be my answer for like the most efficient way to do it. And if you can see the system locally and then take it remote. The only thing you have to change is if you're using DNS, you can update even after you've built a replication task. You can edit that replication task and point it at a new IP address. It'll still work. It doesn't care where it is. Or if you're using DNS, update the DNS entry. And over a VPN would work fine. I actually do that over a VPN. Hey, I'm using a 3-disk RAID Z1 and I want to encrypt the data with LUKS. I don't think you can do that. ZFS has its own encryption. Use the ZFS encryption. Specifically, I don't want to use ZFS native because I had issues in the past and I trust LUKS more. I got nothing for you. There may be some way to do it. I'm unaware how. I have no problems with ZFS encryption, so I use it and it works. Some people still like Nano. Nothing wrong with that. Thanks for the knowledge sharing. What is your company process Bitwarden when an employee is leaving who has XCR passwords? We delete their access to it. What's your best recommendation for offsite cloud storage for business? Veeam is doing VNR from Hyper-V to another offsite. I can use the cloud storage as well. Backblaze has been popular. Backblaze is pretty good. Storage or Storj is new to me. They're a little bit cheaper than Backblaze, but Backblaze, I've got the confidence that they will do things like send me a drive. I don't know if that's a feature I can get with Storj. So if you have a ton of backup and you need it faster than you have the bandwidth to get it, there is the ability for them to send you a drive, for example. And I don't know if all the other companies, I don't think you can do that with Storage A because they're a distributed storage system. I have a friend that we might do replication with each other data sets in TrueNAS. Do you have any media specifically going over that? And it's something you recommend switching for scale? Not really. I have a better idea that if you want to do the buddy backup, and I'm working on this as an idea, the way I would do it is with SyncThing, and it makes more sense. And I will dive deeper into the video as to why, but replication is definitely more efficient by far than SyncThing. So if you trust your friend, yes. The downside is you have to trust your friend, because even though you may keep it encrypted, you will have someone holding the keys to get into the other person's system if you're sharing it on a NAS. Versus if you did it with SyncThing, you can be much more granular with your permissions. The other problem is when you share with a friend, that I know of, there's not a way to set a quota on replication because you're the one replicating the data. So it would be harder for them to set quotas on you. SyncThing, it's just a data set share, and you can use encrypted SyncThing and back up all you want. And when you hit a quota limit, your friend can set a quota limit like, hey, you're allowed to use X amount of storage. When you hit X, I'll let you know you can't use any more. That's harder to do when you're doing things with a, what do you call that? Like data set replication. It's easier with SyncThing. The plan is to disable ZFS auto pull import on startup. I'll script that LUKS drives and import ZFS. Same reason. I think it's a terrible idea because you're adding a layer under ZFS. ZFS speaks natively to the hard drives. I think it is a absolutely terrible idea to do that. Could you make it work? Maybe. I think it would be a system that that's an updated way of falling apart. I would never want to do it that way. How do you get your wife to use a manager like Bitwarden? I don't know. I tell her she can't have access to things without using it, so she uses it. My wife works. She worked in finance for a while, so she's always had to use things like password managers. My wife has a job in tech now, so it's actually a lot easier. I don't use either one of them because I don't have a need for an IDP. So no, I don't have an opinion on them. Is that viable via TrueNAS Core? I think you're going to have to learn how to set it up manually. I mean, you could set up SyncThing to a TrueNAS Core system because SyncThing supports BSD, but you're going to have to learn how to manually configure it in a jail. So it depends on how good you are at configuring BSD jails. I wouldn't do this. It's so cheap to buy a basic SSD. The problem with SD cards, and they do make high endurance ones, and they do make high endurance USBs, but that's where your problem is. There's a lot of logs being written. So installing it on a USB doesn't make as much sense anymore because you run into, what do you call it? You're going to run into like write durability problems. So yeah, I wouldn't do that. I probably got 10 more minutes because my wife said because it's snowing outside, we'll have to leave a few minutes early to take her to the airport. She's worried about the snow. It's not snowing that bad. It's a little bit of snow out. That's what it looks like right now outside. A little bit of snow. Yeah, XCP-ng is free for home. It's all open source, so it's free for home use. It's free for data center use. I would probably recommend buying a support package from them if you're going to use it in a data center, but it's up to you. I mean, technically, it's free. I just like supporting the projects, so we actually sell a lot of the support contracts with it. Send me some of that snow here for your southern neighbors. Yeah, that's just flurries. Yeah, it's way different. Do you buy? We're a partner with Bates, so we're part of Bates partner program. That is how we are authorized to resell it. Yep, we're in the Detroit area. Thoughts on Detroit style pizza? Buddies is the best place for Detroit style pizza, hands down, no questions asked. It's Buddies. Do you have any experience running WireGuard client in a virtualized pfSense? What kinds of? It really depends on how fast it is. I don't virtualize pfSense very often, but if you have a fast, it's all based on how fast the host is that's running the hypervisor. What do you think of how long many PCs will last in the attic lacking insulation? Heat is the killer of electronics. I don't know how hot your attic is. How do you restart NAS server or update when connected to XCP-ng? That's a really good question, and it's got a really easy answer. If we go over here to storage, and someone is asking how to attach a UNAS Pro, this should say UNAS Pro. But you go here to the advanced tab, and I say enable maintenance. And now we're in maintenance mode. Whoops. So just click the maintenance mode button. And now I can update the UNAS Pro or disable maintenance mode. There we go. Now it's back to working. So that's the solution. You just enable maintenance mode. It'll stop all the VMs on it. Jet's Pizza will have word with you. I got introduced to it down in Arizona, but Michigan. Yeah, Jet's Pizza's not bad. Jet's Pizza's the closest you can get to Buddy's Pizza without going to Buddy's Pizza. Snow bad from Houston. My wife is flying to Houston in an hour, so yeah, I have to leave to take her to the airport. That's where she's on. Yeah, she's on her way to Houston. She's asked me if I want to go. If I don't know. She's gone until Friday. I might fly down there. I might jump on I'll just I do short minute things. Right now I told her no, but maybe Wednesday I'll just see if there's a flight available and go on it. I only live down the street from the airport. Is there any way you can run a script to restart network devices like TrueNAS when network is down? Using OpenSense Docker services will throw error when network is down. Yeah, you could just build some type of, you have to figure out how you want to monitor it, where this monitoring sits to know what network down, and what does network down mean? That's a perspective thing. What piece is down, detect it, and run a script that, SSHs in and hits reboot or restart. I'm still testing the AI key. I want to give it a real world scenario. So one of my friends is going to do some real world testing with it. Then I'll do a video. Is live migration RAM only not being transparent? VM freezes for 3 seconds after migration. Normal behavior with FC storage, guest tools install. I don't know if it's it doesn't usually pause that much. It depends on how fast the system is. A while ago, I gave a demo on some Dell servers where I took a free PBX server and had phone calls live on it and was able to live migrate it and work perfectly fine. So the hardware we were using had no problem with it. I can't speak for everyone's hardware though. Some attic consider inside, some consider outside. Really depends on the house. Yeah, it's a heat question, not an attic question. I have family that lives about 4 miles from the airport. Oh, okay. Here in Detroit, you live by me. Then I'm near Detroit Metro. I'm in Southgate, Michigan. That's actually where. Well, we got rid of that office very recently. We got rid of our Southgate office, but that's where the Southgate office was, and I live in that same area. Yeah, it's one of the demos I did when people ask me how well does XCP-ng handle migrations. I'm like, watch me make a phone call. Or have, in a matter of fact, there were several people on the phone at the office, and I took free PBX and I migrated it, and it worked. So that's there. Oh yeah, Inkster. Yep. Yeah, definitely. What was I going to pull up? Oh, cool. I can share this tab. But my old office, I say old office because one we just got rid of, was right there. The address still shows on here. Actually, I gotta update this so it doesn't show there anymore because it's actually not going to be our address anymore. Actually, I gotta figure out what to put for that address. That's interesting. Huh. So where do I move this address to? It still exists. It just I'm not an Ohio company, and our main office is in Toledo. But the airport is right here. So, and I live in this area. And then this is the Detroit River right here. So kind of the lay of the land of where I'm at, if anyone's curious. Yeah, it's nice because when we fly in, we can leave our car at their place. Oh yeah, that's definitely. And people do that to my house. All of my friends that drive, they live a little further from the airport, and I let them leave their car here. And I'll give them a ride over to the airport. Yeah, the conveniences of living by the airport and being able to just go like, hey, I'm just gonna go drive down the street, jump on a plane, and go somewhere. Get somewhere fast. I'm far enough away that I do not get flight noise. I'm not in the path. So the way the airport works, and actually I'll show you this because my wife just messaged me. You can see where the runways. So most of the runways are this way and this way and this way. They do have a couple smaller runways this way. If there's something, and there's Lawrence Systems, they'll fly over Southgate, but they're so many miles away, they aren't that loud. And they're usually flying in this way. So it's generally not an issue. Last question. Do you have your schedule for any cons or gatherings for 2025? Yeah, I've decided I'm definitely going to MSP GeekCon, so I'll be there. And I don't know what else. I don't have a lot picked out yet. I'll be at IT Nation, some of the big ConnectWise events, but not anything else yet. Yeah, Inkster is just north, and you're right in the path. So yeah, it's loud there. I used to live over there. Oh, awesome. So you went to DattoCon. That's great. Okay, you're over by Willow Run Airport, so towards Ypsilanti. And you used to live by the train tracks, yeah. But I'm going to start winding this down. I will remind people, because a lot of people have contacted me, and I don't mind people who want to reach out. So I'll throw this out here. I'm easy to reach for people that want to say hi. This is already on the site. But if you scroll down, I've got my contact information, different socials. It always changes. Socials are dynamic. I always tell people, go to lawrencesystems.com. Whatever socials I'm on at that time, socials are dynamic. Signal is less dynamic. I've been on Signal for a while. My forums are a great place to reach out to me. I never use Facebook, but if people DM me there, you get a response. Matt monitors the responses on that. For now, I'm kind of on Twitter. It's so full of spam, and I don't get the engagement on Twitter. Mostly, I seem to get spam engagement. So these are the socials you can find me on. The best place to find me is the forums. I've also, let me throw this up here on the banner. Where'd it go? Is it this one? Homelab at lawrencesystems.com. Another easy way to find me. So if you want to email me, feel free to reach out via homelab at lawrencesystems.com. I do not put that on the website because then it would get filled with spam. See, let me make sure I caught up all the questions before we leave. Have a good week. Maybe you decide to go to Houston. I might. depending on what the weather looks like. I have a lot of stuff. Do you not consider forums? No, I think forums are the steadfast way people find information. I get over 90,000 people a week going to my forums because that's where the answers are. Because you know where the answers aren't? Discord. Do you know where the answers go to die? Discord. And Discord is trash for actually trying to find information. Discord is a chat server that's trying to pretend to be forums, and it's a trash way to do it. It's amazing that my forums is taking years, but forums are still, when you Google something, how do you find that information? You'll find a YouTube video explaining it. You'll find a forum post, not just my forums. You'll find level 1 text. You'll find the 45 drives you started forums. Forums are still, like, by far, they're only legacy to these weird, people that just don't get it, that don't have gray hair. And they're like, how are we going to start giving our knowledge out? Let's start a Discord. Oh, really? You want to build on someone else's platform? Like, that's a trash idea. Discord will eventually rug pull all of you. I'm not saying this because I'm bitter or anything like that. I have a Discord, but absolutely there will be a big rug pull. Some VC firm will come in and go, man, that looks like a healthy amount of information. Be a shame if we paywalled it and people had to pay us for it. And they will inshitify it because it's just a way of things. So anyways, Discord is modern IRC, and I'm fine with that. I don't have a problem with chatting with people. That part's fine. That makes sense. I don't like it as I want to find information. Matter of fact, the link I posted earlier, how did I find it? I just didn't even have to look in my forums. I threw it in Google, Windows XP resolution, boom, forum post, top result. You're not going to find that in Discord. You have to go in Discord and ask the question somewhere. That's stupid. /. Yeah. Does Discord kind of pretends to be forums? Yeah. Yeah, forums are the way to go. I mean, I don't understand. And the stats are amazing to me. Like, people say, oh, Tom, I don't think you're right. But let me pull something up here before I leave, because my wife said it's time to go. See if I have it, and I'll share the stat with you here. Here is just 7 days worth of data. So 8 million requests. 84. This particular data set was only 84,000. I'm not sharing it. Hold on. 84,000 unique visitors from January 6th to January 13th. So forums aren't dead. Discourse is garbage for finding things. My forums are not. So my forums are quite popular, by the way. Yeah. Yes, I have videos on getting started with Tailscale. So, all right, well, I will leave all this here. Join my forums or email me, contact me, however you want to reach out. Forums is the best way. If you have questions, I don't do tech support via email. Homelab LawrenceSystems is for people who want to say hi or something like that, but it's certainly not for, hey, please help me with my pfSense setup. That's a forum post. I'll reply usually with that. So anyways, thank you all for joining in. Thanks for hanging out with me. It's been a great time, and take care.